heard, the debates are going to be running over the next 15 months. This is the first of 10, and each one is set on a premise and a positioning paper, and the positioning papers are compiled by Professor William Gumede, who is Associate Professor and Convener for the Political Economy at the Wits School of Governance. He's also the Executive Chair of the Democracy Works Foundation. I hope you got a copy of that when you were registering at the start of this evening. If you haven't, you can pick up the paper at the start there. So today's exercise isn't just about us in this room, but it is something to be shared with others outside of here, but also with future students. We're going to compile a book out of the 10 series. The theme of the first positioning paper is Comparative Long-Term Development Planning Lessons for South Africa. And the paper really looks at the role of efficient planning and the importance of effective coordination and integration of development policies, whether they are fiscal, monetary, or they are social and across government. It compares the planning of development in selected countries, many of them developing countries, because we have to compare apples with apples and then get a sense of what went right, what went wrong, and what we can actually add to the table as well. So it makes for very interesting reading, and I would suggest that you take a look at that as well. Now, our panelists each have 10 minutes at the start of this debate to put forward their thinking on today's theme, and then we're going to have a conversation, something I love to do, and I don't like to have conversations by myself. That's why you're here. So you're going to help me with this conversation. We do have roving microphones, and as soon as you'd like to talk, please put up your hand, but please don't talk before we've started. I will ignore you, but I'd like you to really participate in this conversation. It is that, it's a debate and it's a conversation. So without further ado, our first speaker today is Khulekani Mathe, who is the head of the NPC Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Siki, and I'd like to start by greeting fellow panelists here with me, members of the Tambo family, the many ambassadors, and the leadership of Wits University. Thank you very much for this opportunity. The reason we are particularly excited about this initiative is because the National Planning Commission believes in social dialogue, believes that in order to take our country forward, we really need to talk about both the problems that we face as well as the solutions that we need to be able to move forward. I also particularly appreciate the fact that this is a series of debates, because I've heard instances where people discuss the National Development Plan, they set aside 2 hours and they think they can discuss the National Development Plan. And what they end up doing is talking generalities or maybe just focus in one section and so on. In particular, these are themed so that we can actually delve into each of the aspects of the National Development Plan. Again, there is a tendency to pick and choose, pick the sections that you either like or dislike and focus on those, whereas in fact, the National Development Plan and the various sections of it are meant to together make the impact that we want and take us forward to the vision that we have set for ourselves. So it is our program for addressing poverty, inequality, and unemployment. It provides a package of measures, so it's not based on a single measure to address these issues, but a package of measures. It is based on the understanding that, after all, development is about people. So if we do not, and if our initiatives are not making an impact on the lives of the people, all we are doing will be incomplete. People themselves and their own agency are critical to solving the challenges. So they're not just there to have things done for them or to them, but they ought to be active participants in finding the solutions to the challenges that they face. The National Development Plan calls for greater collaboration between various stakeholders. Again, because if we act alone, those who are in business or in government and so on, we will not succeed. Our impact will be very limited. So again, the idea of bringing us all together here is in fact part of the spirit of the NDP to get us all together to talk about how we move forward and how we solve our challenges. I have just come from Parliament where, as I've said, the Minister, the Deputy President and the President, as part of the budget vote, were outlining programs that will be implemented over the next 5 years and how this government is intending to take forward the NDP and implement its part of the National Development Plan. As you would know, that part of this has involved some of the changes that the President has announced at the start of this administration, reorganizing government, creating different ministries to get our institutions right so that we can effectively implement the National Development Plan and achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves. Some of these include, for instance, setting out very detailed plans beyond what the NDP is saying, to take each aspect of the NDP and set out detailed plans of how we are going to implement those proposals, as well as making sure that these are rigorously monitored and, of course, holding accountable those who are assigned the responsibility for implementing the different parts of the NDP. One of the things, for instance, that was announced both in the State of the Nation address and the budget vote yesterday was the fact that the presidency, as part of leading this initiative, it will in fact make sure that it assesses all plans of various state departments to make sure that what they put forward as plans are indeed taking forward the national development plans and the objectives that it works towards. In addition, there will be a unit established that assesses the socio-economic impact of all current and future policies to make sure that we do not, as we move forward, put in place policies that actually works against what we're trying to achieve. So the presidency and all the structures that it has set up are meant and geared to make sure that we implement the National Development Plan going forward. And of course, you've heard the president recommitting to social dialogue and announcing the number of presidential working groups that will be established to make sure that where there are challenges, we talk to each other to find solutions, because there is strength in doing that. Of course, the National Planning Commission continues to exist. There's one or two of the commissioners in the audience, and it continues to advise government on how to implement the NDP, also to engage with different stakeholders, facilitate partnerships between different stakeholders, undertake pilot projects to test some of the policies, because the Commission would be the first one to admit that not all of the proposals that are in the NDP are tested. So we need to subject them to testing before we actually mainstream them. So the NDP and the commissioners are looking at ways in which each of the proposals can be tested before they are put into the policies of government. Also working hard to define what could not be defined in the short time that we had of developing the NDP. So there is a concept, for instance, in the NDP of what we call a decent standard of living, which we are now spending time to define, to say, what does that actually mean? Because you will all agree that part of the biggest challenge that we face as a nation is inequality. And how that manifests is the fact that although we are a middle-income country, but in fact the majority of people could be living in a low-income country. That is the extent of the inequality. So when we talk about the decent standard of living, we are trying to answer the question that says, how will we ensure that everybody actually feels and experiences what it feels like to live in a middle-income country? So I could go on and upset Sigi over here, but the National Development Plan, and certainly government, is implementing the plan and inviting everybody to come along and work with government and other sectors of society going forward. Thank you.